when Bitcoin does go parabolic. And when I say parabolic, I mean a face-melting move, folks, that is going to leave the world in shock. You're going to realize that it no longer makes sense to price Bitcoin in US dollars. It will, at that point, only make sense to price US dollars in Bitcoin. Hello, folks, and welcome to Safely Snorting Bitcoin. In this one, I want to talk about the imminent supply shock for Bitcoin, the sat squeeze, if you will, this coming event that very few people, folks, are actually tuned in to the truth. And if you dig down, as I have done over the past 4 years that I got into the market, I have dug down to incredible depths into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and I am here, folks, with a very real prediction and, for me, statement of the obvious. And I know for a lot of folks who have held Bitcoin for a number of years, they know this, but it needs to be shouted out on all channels where people get it. Folks, everybody that gets into this market tends to have, at the beginning of their journey, some unit bias. They feel like they got into crypto too late to get into Bitcoin, because when they look at how many Bitcoins they can afford, most people, at least most people this channel is intended for, can only afford a portion of a Bitcoin. They can't really afford a whole one, or if they can, they can't afford very many. And for a lot of them, they can just afford a tiny fraction of a Bitcoin. So it's very attractive to those people when they look at the cryptocurrency market, and they tend to make the mistake of thinking that this is all just about technology instead of the truth, or that it's about monetary policy and money. But what happens is they tend to get, and this happens to almost all of us, folks, we get hypnotized by crypto vanity. We think, heck, maybe I can't own a whole Bitcoin, or maybe I can't own more than one or two or whatever, but I can own a whole bunch of, this Litecoin or Dogecoin or any of these stupid altcoin scams that at their core are riffing off of Bitcoin at best, and are in merely existing, basically invalidating themselves and validating Bitcoin. I mean, it's really deep, folks, when you get down into it. Bitcoin is the cryptocurrency market. I mean, all of the other ones, all of the other coins are a joke in comparison to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is absolute digital scarcity. This has never existed prior to Bitcoin. This has never existed in human history, and the implications of it are understood by, from what I can tell, relatively speaking, a very few. I am just consistently dumbfounded that someone of my caliber can actually, with not that much effort, have this figured out and actually see what is happening here, and how many people are being fooled into thinking that that all these cryptocurrencies, these altcoins, are anything of value. It's a complete mind screw. I mean, folks, this totally, I feel so horrible for the people who think they have value stored in a lot of these altcoins. It's really sad. And it's survival of the fittest. It's on them to do their research. I know every person is responsible for doing their own, but my goodness, folks, there is a supply shock coming. If you look at how many Bitcoins have been lost in the past, 2 to 3 million is the figure I hear consistently, but You've got to think too that people are losing bitcoins now even, and they'll continue to lose them into the future. And there's so many sinks and places where Bitcoin will get taken out of circulation permanently, through people dying and things, not having backups and not having any way to continue the ownership of their Bitcoin onto a new generation. We already have less than 10% of the total Bitcoin supply actually available to be purchased on exchanges. And I honestly think it it is inevitable, given, I mean, it is almost a given to those of the people who are actually paying attention what is going to happen. It's so obvious, but so frustrating to some of us that to so many people it seems impossible to see. Bitcoin had an immaculate conception. Its creator was pseudonymous, and the creator disappeared after a few years working on the project. And once that was done, the mere fact that it happened and that people paid attention to it means that same set of circumstances really can't be replicated. It cannot happen again, and it doesn't need to. There's no reason for it to, because Bitcoins are infinitely divisible, and as long as there is a hard cap that will never be violated, which is what we have with Bitcoin, essentially 21 million total Bitcoins, then it works. The system is sound, is the way to put it, right? We can't inflate the supply of Bitcoin, because any node, any miner, or any third party or any individual acting party that attempts to inflate the supply of Bitcoin would instantly be thrown out of consensus and rejected by the network. And this is just completely different from what you see in terms of the altcoins that not only, I mean, it's their policy to inflate a lot of the time, and not all of them. I'm speaking very generally here, but the mere fact that the monetary policy can be altered invalidates them, and the fact that these altcoins exist in the first place is really just dragging down Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need the altcoins, and the altcoins don't need to exist. Folks, this is about a new monetary system. No one is ever too late to plug into this. That's the thing that is so hard for people to. This is how they go down the unit bias, crypto vanity rabbit hole and end up owning some coins that just over the course of one market cycle lose 90% of their value. This happens over and over and over. There are thousands of dead altcoins. Do your research. Make sure you know what you're putting your money into. Everybody that ever bought Bitcoin felt like they were too late. And then 4 years later, or less, they're kicking themselves in the ass for not having bought more. And then as the years progress, they turn their mind, actually, you begin to think in Bitcoin, you begin to think in Satoshis, and you realize that in the very near future, when this supply shock happens, when Bitcoin does go parabolic, and when I say parabolic, I mean a face-melting move, folks, that is going to leave the world in shock. You're going to realize that it no longer makes sense to price Bitcoin in US dollars. It will, at that point, only make sense to price US dollars in Bitcoin. To price US dollars in Satoshis. This is happening. When is it going to happen? We're not sure. No one can know. If they knew that, then they could see the future. All we can do is look at the trends and try to think for ourselves and look at look at how these digital protocols function. And actually, they're not that complicated. Everything seems ultra complicated. And there is, in its essence, a lot of complicated stuff in Bitcoin, in the code and how it all works. But really, at its core, Bitcoin is incredibly simplistic. It's incredibly simplistic. And that's a hallmark of something of pure genius. Right? Think about it. Think about E equals MC squared. And how about Newton's law of universal gravitation? These things are ultra powerful, yet eloquent and simplistic in nature. And that is a description of Bitcoin in many, many ways. You know, the banks have lied for years about Bitcoin, about what it is. They bought up all the cheap Bitcoin. Back when I was getting into the market in 2018, the lies were abound, folks. It was awful. There were JP Morgan coins flying around, and these, it was still I came in during the aftershocks of the ICO explosion, the initial coin offering explosion, post Ethereum, right during the right around the time of EOS being at its highest point, probably, or maybe just past its highest point, and the banks and the elites lied through their teeth to the public, talking about Bitcoin being rat poison. They bought it up, folks. They actually did it. They lined their pockets. Do your research. Look up things like the Ethereum blockchain, I think it's called the Ethereum Blockchain Alliance or something like that, and the H3 Corda, these things that these banks made back in years ago. They knew what this was. Don't let them fool you, folks. They just knew that they needed time to develop their alternate system, the central bank digital currencies that are coming to you just with the executive order a few days ago. It is coming, folks. The digital dollar is here. This is a new channel. If you're enjoying the content, like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Bitcoin Safely. I am giving away Bitcoin here on the channel. There's a perpetual Bitcoin giveaway, so there's always one running. Enter. You can do that by leaving a comment with your Twitter handle if you have tips enabled, your Bitcoin tips enabled on Twitter, or you can enter via email at safely_snorting_bitcoin@gmail.com. Folks, it's been a fun one. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Just as some closing thoughts, Bitcoin in the near future is going to experience a supply shock unlike anything the world has ever seen an asset class or an asset actually undergo. Bitcoin is still in the monetization phase, so as it rallies into these, I'll call them monetization rallies, these parabolic moves where it achieves new all-time highs, almost almost like an order of magnitude jump, where the world has to kind of stop afterwards and reprogram their brains, that Bitcoin is now worth this new achieved value. And when that happens, your long-term hodlers, they will and do sell into those monetization rallies. And this is how Bitcoin gets redistributed to the masses and re-hodled by people who got in. You get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. This is a saying in the space already, and it is very true. But do not be fooled, folks. There is a time coming, and this is not financial advice, but there is a time coming where we will see a $1 million Bitcoin per coin. That is coming. That is coming way sooner than people realize. It would not take much at all in terms of moving the percentages of asset classes around, shifting tiny percentages of these giant investment portfolios, and Bitcoin would soar to the area of $1 million per coin. Now, there are obstacles in the way. However, inevitably, as hyper-Bitcoinization continues, I am a firm believer that Bitcoin will eventually reach 5 million per coin and eventually 10 million per coin as it devours into legacy asset classes one after another, and this slow generational changes happen, the inheritance of old generational money in new hands. Folks, this is happening. And you know, as a closing thought, I'll give you this to think about. Take a look at the channels and the influencers and things surrounding just the Bitcoin space. Look at the number of people, the followers, the engagement, and ask yourself, why is that group so small? Yet the cryptocurrency, the only real one that they are pushing, it's the biggest one. The whole industry is built on it. And whenever Bitcoin goes up, the altcoins bark in turn. And whenever Bitcoin goes down, the altcoins cry in turn, right? Bitcoin is this market. It is still tiny compared to other asset classes. The future is big. This channel is just getting started. Make sure you like and subscribe. With that, I believe this is my longest one so far, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Go back and look at some of my other videos. Give those a shot as well. Like and subscribe. Every time you leave a comment with your Twitter handle, it is an entry into the Bitcoin giveaways. With that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks for giving this one the time of day, folks. I really had fun with this. And I'll catch you in the next one. For now, this is Safely Snorting Bitcoin signing off.